Hello and welcome to Decoding SuperBrains with Kumaar Bagrodia. Our superbrain today is none other than Dr. Deepak Phatak, who is Professor Emeritus at IIT Bombay. He has taught there from 1971 until 2018 in the Department of Computer Science and Engineering. His main concern is to use technology for improving quality of education at a large scale commensurate with the national aspirations. He headed the national initiative on Akash tablets. He has won several distinctions and awards in his long and fantastic career. Amongst them, he was conferred the Padma Shri by the Government of India in 2013, and he received the prestigious Lifetime Achievement Award of IIT Bombay in 2014. Dr. Phatak believes that teaching cannot just be one's profession, it must be the dharma of the teacher. His dream is to see a resurgent India which takes its rightful place in the world. Dr. Phatak, it's such an honor and a privilege to have you with us. And welcome to Decoding SuperBrains.
Thank you, Kumar. It's a pleasure for me as well to interact with you. And my greetings to all the audience.
So let me get right into it. In your career, in your life, what are those key attributes, key aspects which you think really stand out to you being a superbrain?
First of all, I'm not sure I fully understand the concept of a superbrain. All human beings are endowed with brains, and there are only marginal differences between the brains of people who achieve something more than others. One of the reasons, of course, is those people get opportunities. But there are other reasons, and most of those reasons are connected with the emotional makeup, the commitment, the aspirations of the people rather than just the intellectual capability. In fact, having taught at IIT Bombay, I have learned very early to discard any intellectual superiority that you see, because you see that amongst all. My own contention is that the intellectual prowess essentially comes to people through their genetic makeup, which is what in Hindi we call a bapoti. You know, that's a given from your parents. You haven't done much to get it. But what you do with that intellectual prowess shall determine your usefulness to yourself and to the world. And what you do depends upon how determined you are to make a difference to yourself and to the world. And that largely comes out of emotions such as aspirations, such as desire to make changes, such as desire to make things happen. And if such desires are also connected with empathy, with concern for all others, I believe that leads you to do something useful in life.
So, you know, one of the key areas that we all falter in many ways throughout our lives and careers is the inability to face disappointments, failures, and the anxiety of performing better in life. And I'm sure, you know, as every other successful human being, you would have faced some of these in your life. Can you give us some examples of how you have come out of them and what has been your real mantra?
Well, failures are something that will always happen, Kumar. They will happen in everybody's life. Sometimes the failures could be very stark. They could leave you devastated. Sometimes they could be minor. But it is up to you to decide how long do you keep crying over those failures or disappointments. You know, I learned one thing very early in life, that time is a one-way traffic. Every instance that goes by never comes back again. You lose money, you can earn it. You lose wealth, you can earn it. But time you lose, you will never earn. Now, once you understand that, then there are only two things that you can do with time in the context of failures. Either you can keep sulking, in which case you are merely losing additional moments of your life. in doing useless things. Or otherwise, you can say, all right, this has not worked out the way I wanted, or I have failed here. Does not matter. Let me start the thing again. Personally, long time ago, I decided that I give 24 hours for any disappointment or failure. Even if it is very bad, I cry over it. I do not sleep early. I dream, whatever it is. But next morning when I get up and I see the sun rising, I say, the new day has dawned, and now I must forget all the past and get on with it. That has helped tremendously in not wasting time, in unnecessary repenting. The failures will hurt, but how long do you carry the hurt is up to you. If you can reduce it significantly, I think that gives all of us a much more useful time in life to spend on positive things.
That is such a fantastic way to look at it. And I'm sure if we can start practicing this, method, if you will, of saying that with every new day, every new sunrise, we have a new opportunity, and to let go of the past failures or disappointments.
Yes. May I add one more dimension of the failure? I was lucky to have learned about this aspect very early in life. This dimension is the perceived failure in a comparative sense. When you are a student, the marks that you get in your exams decide whether you are good or bad. And that means if I have done better than others, I am good. If I have done worse than others, I am bad. Now, this comparison continues even in later life. If I earn more than others, I have done better. If I earn less than others, I have done worse. Now, this relative grading sort of creates a kind of rat race in your mind. I have a favorite axiom which I relate to people, saying that every rat race will leave a few winner rats, a large number of loser rats, but only rats, not human beings. And we are human beings, and therefore we must not be encouraged extraordinarily by any success so as to fill ourselves with pride and arrogance, nor we should become despondent with any failure. I think we must take these in the right spirit and do the best we can. So this is one small anecdote that I would like to relate. I was an 8th standard student studying in a city of Raipur. We were transferred from Jagdalpur in Bastar district to Raipur, and I had joined the government multipurpose higher secondary school. When I was new in that school, the terminal exam for the 8th, in the mathematics paper, I scored 96. I was pretty excited, 96 out of 100. I was, of course, at the top of the class. I came home with that answer book and smilingly told my mother, I scored 96 on 100. She also smiled in a congratulatory way and then started looking at my answer paper and says, where did you lose 4 marks? I was a bit upset. I haughtily told her, I have stood first in my class. And guess what? Her face became very stern and she slapped me. I must be the only joker in the world who got slapped for scoring 96 marks. I started crying and I said, why? And he said, did I ask you whether you stood first or second or third? Even if you had stood last and scored only 40 marks, I would have asked you, where did you lose those 60 marks? I felt bad at that moment, but when I thought about it, I realized what an important lesson my mother was giving me. Don't ever compare yourself with others. Check whether you have done things to the best of your abilities. Since then, I have learned to introspect after doing any major activity and check whether I have done my best. And believe me, the answer is always no. That introspection is what makes you learn from things that you have done and makes you prepare to do better. So I think it is the comparison which eventually stings. Of course, you have to participate in the rat race, but I think one has to perpetually keep examining whether one has done one's best or not.
That is such a fantastic point, sir, on whether you've done your best and to constantly self introspect on your own performance, not on a relative basis,
Yes.
but within.
Yes.
Which brings me to my
Yes.
next question. How then does a person like you manage the anxiety of performance? So, how do you keep answering that question that have I done the best? Will I be able to do my best? Will I be able to perform at the right level?
uh, Anxiety, which results in stress. I mean, that's a common term that I hear. Uh, there was a very interesting episode where a friend of mine asked my wife that, isn't Professor perpetually stressed? So she looked at him quizzically and said, stressed? He gives stress to all others. He is never stressed. I think what she meant is that if if you are perpetually busy in taking action, there is no time for any anxiety. Anxiety will come if you are not sure of yourself. Anxiety will come if you are afraid of uncertainty. Uncertainties will be there in life. But instead of treating those uncertainties in an anxious manner, if you treat them as opportunities and apply your mind to see what best you can do there, you will still not be worried so much as being decisive and action oriented. At least that is what I have learned from life.
That is a fantastic input, sir. And which brings me to a question around you've often said one of your mottos in life is learning for life, and you're a lifelong learner. So give us
Yes.
your inputs on that, and also how does it relate to having great memory, analytical skills? Um, if I can tell our viewers, Dr. Pathak is 72 and has the energy, enthusiasm, memory, and sharpness of a 22-year-old. So give us some of those secrets behind that, sir.
Uh, Memory is something that gets horned up when you are very young. Again, like most Indian children, I was fortunate in that when we were young, our parents and grandparents made us learn things by rote. We used to detest it at that time. So whether it is, pahada or multiplication tables or various shloka or something, many times without understanding, you have to learn by rote. But later on, we realized that many of these things we will not be able to learn by heart if we attempt that later without any practice. Memory is important. I mean, I am not saying that one cannot be forgetful. Forgetfulness is a different thing because that is a very selective memory loss. But you cannot forget important things, whether they are related to your work, because if you start forgetting, then many times, particularly when you are dealing with complex situations, an important thing might be missed out. And if that is missed out, it might cause chaos. So you can't really afford to forget that. The second thing is you should never forget people and people's relationships with you, because that is what keeps you giving a whole lot of inner strength. When you are facing a problem, you start thinking, oh, in this particular case, that person had done like this. In that particular case, that person had done like that. And then you remember that. Slight digression, but I will tell you that I have led large teams, and there will be many people in your audience who would be leaders of some kind, managers or whatever it is. One thing I have learned very well, and that is related more to the emotional side of human relations, is that whenever any person in my team does something good, may not be extraordinary, but something good, I make it a point to either send a complimentary note by email or call that person up. It is amazing how many people are around us who are looking for that one word of appreciation without ever saying so. Just as we ourselves look for appreciation when we have done something useful. So I have found this very, very useful. In fact, uh, both the critique and the compliments from people close to you are very, very critical. I'll tell you, I mean, you told me I'm 72 years old. Let me tell you a person who has been a great mentor to myself is much older than me. You might have known Mr. F.C. Kohli, who set up Tata Consultancy Services. He is now 96 years old. I had the pleasure of attending his 96th birthday. Every 2 or 3 months, he will call me when I'm in office and berate me for 10 minutes for not doing sufficient work on Indian language computing. He has never forgotten what he has asked me to do as a priority, and he never forgets that I have not done enough. He is such a person of such a great reverence. In fact, it's a very funny sight in my office. Whenever a call comes from Kohli's office and Kohli starts speaking, I stand up. So there are 5 or 6 people in my room and they're wondering why this idiot is standing up suddenly. But that is, the Indian tezi, when an elder comes in, you sort of stand up. And I listen to him and I politely tell him that I'll do something. But it is such words, whether the words are encouragement or whether the words are prodding you to action. I think such people, and there are a large number of people whose relationships and whose words you should never forget. I think memory is about 2 different things. One is the analytical memory. The analytical skills are absolutely important. In fact, I don't understand when people say that they will use calculator to do some simple calculations. Of course, you must use calculator and of course you must use computers. I've been teaching computing all my life. But it does not mean that you deprive yourself of the basic skills, because basic computing skills, basic arithmetic skills are the foundation for analytical skills. That is why physics and mathematics are 2 subjects, particularly those who are scientifically oriented. They must never ever forget the importance of memory.
Sir, give us some examples of how you inculcate lifelong learning to this date.
I am, of course, fortunate that I have been in a teaching profession, which means that as the technology changes, I am forced to study new things because I have to teach those new things. But even otherwise, it is important to keep track of what is happening around you in the world. And today, if you ask me, in fact, we have a problem of plenty in the sense that the amount of information available on internet is mind-boggling. And therefore, there is a chance that in your desire to learn, you might go astray by keep looking at things. So the first thing I would say is that, of course, you have to learn lifelong, and I'll come back to that point again. But while doing so, be methodical and choose a line of approach. Find out as many contents as you wish in the first run, but curate them and decide that what you will study in depth. Now, this study, unfortunately, people associate learning with only your childhood and you are studying in a regular course. That is nonsense. I think learning today is important. And I am not talking of general learning, but I am talking about professional learning. You know that in old days, when people graduated and took up a job, they could actually spend 30, 40 years doing roughly the same that they were doing, of course, with better management and better coordinating skills, etc. But today, things are changing so rapidly that what you learned in your school or college days is not going to be sufficient. Whether you are an IT professional, whether you are a manufacturing supervisor, or whether you are a doctor, things are changing regularly. And therefore, even for working professionals, it is absolutely essential that you keep learning new things. In this, I have 2 suggestions. One suggestion is that when we grow up and join a job, we do read manuals related to technological things, or we do read rule books and so on. But we rarely read textbooks because textbooks are associated only with university. My suggestion to all professionals is that because reading textbook is not easy. So my suggestion is, in your chosen area of work, purchase a new textbook that has appeared recently, which you had never seen. And I say purchase decidedly, because whenever you get a book from library or get it easily on internet, you may tend to keep that book from the library under your bed or something, under your pillow. I recall when I had purchased a book on digital signal processing, costing in those days 450 rupees, when my salary was 750 rupees per month. And my wife looked at that book and he says, "Oh, this new book has come to the library." I said, "No, no, I have purchased it." She was a bit aghast. But 3 days later, she asked me, "Have you read that book? Are you reading that book?" Because it was her money that I had spent. So you see, only when you have a stake in something, you do that. But I digress. The point I'm making is, reading a good textbook, it may take 5 months, 6 months to read it, will give you immense amount of insight into any specific activity. That is number one. The second thing is, I think it is important to learn from human interactions. Much of my lifelong learning, particularly in areas such as ethics and all, have come from such interactions. Although it is slightly out of sync with exactly the question that you asked, but I believe it would be useful. Let me tell you an anecdote that happened in 70s. I was going to the city of Nagpur to attend a marriage of a friend of mine, one Mr. Pangarkar. I had taken the late night train, reached Nagpur early morning. I was to stay with another friend whose address I had. In those days, there were cycle rickshaws, So I hired a cycle rickshaw. He says, 1 rupee 50 paise. I said, fine. When we reached my friend's house, I gave him a 10 rupee note. And he says, no, sir, I don't have change. You are the first customer. And then he suggested, why don't you take 1 rupee 50 paise from your friend? I felt very embarrassed. I said, I am visiting them for the first time. I don't want to do that. He says, all right, that is the house. I will come back and give you. And I went. When after taking breakfast and all, I was actually going towards the door, and my friend's brother, Praful, asked me, what is the problem, Deepak? I said, yeah, the rickshawala supposed to come back to return my money. He says, what? He said, I gave him 10 rupees. Are you mad? He said, gave him 10 rupees. Did you note down his rickshaw number? I said, I did no such thing. He says, forget it. He knows that you have come from outside. He knows that you are attending a marriage and going back. He is not a fool to give you back. I said, no, my judgment about people cannot be that wrong. So I took a 10 rupee bet with him that he will come back. Unfortunately, he did not come back for 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. But 4.5 hours later, he knocked on the door. And it was my friend's brother who opened it and said, Aapke yahan mehman aaye, you have a guest from outside, and I have to return him 8 rupee 50 paise. And then when he saw me, he said, sorry, sir, when I left you, I got a patient, a lady patient who had to be taken to a hospital which was 6 kilometers away. Once I came in that area, I was not getting a fare to come nearer you. And that is why it took me 3 or 4 hours. Now, what a beautiful lesson in ethics, What is not mine is not mine, and I will return it to the owner. A small rickshawala has taught me. I have not forgotten that incident till today. Now, I believe that such lessons you can remember only if you remember the lifelong learning from such instances.
Absolutely. So, like you said, sir, learning is not just what you do by way of reading or watching a video or studying per se actively. It is what life teaches you and how you can take a lesson out of every experience and hold on to it in some way or the other.
Yes.
So since you spend so much time, like you said, studying and staying up to date on, I would in fact say staying ahead of many of us, how do you manage your work-life balance? And since learning is a part of your work and life, and how are you managing sleep and everything?
Well, very interesting. I will tell you, I was actually a 9 to 5 person in the first couple of years of my job in 71. Then I happened to be transferred from electrical to computer science department, where Jimmy Isaac, Professor Isaac, was the head of the computer center and has been one of my gurus, along with Professor Kekre, who was my PhD guy. Now, Jimmy Isaac was a workaholic. He would be there not only during the days, he would be there even in the nights. And I sort of took fancy because a lot of useful discussions could happen in the night. We were all staying in the campus. So after dinner, I'll go back, like some others would come. And we used to have fun time. Computer science was growing at that time. We were a few faculty members. And we were working almost like, not round the clock, but almost like. A very funny thing happened. Two of my colleagues got married. I was already married and my wife had given me up by this time. But two of my colleagues, Professor Sarda and Professor Dhamdere, got married. One night around 2 o'clock, Isaac comes to me and says, "Hey, where is Sarda? I have not seen him for several days." I didn't say anything. Next week, he says, "Where is Dhamdere? I have not seen him for 1 week." Then I could not resist. I reminded him, Jimmy, we used to call him either Jimmy or boss, Professor Isaac. They were very friendly. He said, "Jimmy, have a heart. Those two guys got married just now." And you know what he said? "What has marriage to do with work?" I didn't know. I was looking at him with a gaping mouth. Then he realized what he had said. And then he smiled and said, "You know, Phatak, we must meet their spouses and tell them that their husbands are primarily meant for the computer science department. Occasionally, they will come home." Now, that was hard learning. Of course, most people will have to sleep normal time, but I have trained myself, thanks to Professor Isaac's teaching. I can do with, on an average, 4 hours of sleep per day. I don't think everybody needs to be that mad, but I have a simple recipe which I tell all my students and everybody else I would like to share with you. You know, based on our own individual health characteristic, we will require some time to sleep. Whether it is 8 hours, 7 hours, 6 hours, or 5 hours, that may differ. But my contention is you can cut down from the average sleeping time by some practice, at least by half an hour to 1 hour, without disturbing your health. The recipe is like this. Every night when you decide that, okay, now it is sleeping time and you are going to retire, at that time, spend 15 minutes in doing something which is not related to your normal work. You know, you may write your diary, you may read something else or whatever, just 15 minutes and go back to sleep after 15 minutes. Do that for 2 weeks and you will find that your average sleeping time has come down by 15 minutes. But since you don't know it, you keep doing it. You keep doing it for 15 minutes till such time that you really start feeling sleepy even when you are doing something interesting for those 15 minutes. That is the limit of your endurance. And you should say, okay, now I will stop. I have seen many of my students practicing this and reducing their average sleeping time from 7 hours to 5 hours without any impact on their health. Of course, this may work differently for different people. Let me also tell you that 4 hours on an average sleeping time is generally not good enough. But I have learned something useful. I have learned to sleep even for short durations. So I can sleep in the flight, I can sleep in the car, I can sleep anywhere comfortably. If you make me lie down just now, I will go to sleep within 2 minutes. Now, I have been perhaps lucky, but that helps. Short naps will help you to manage your total work time with sleep time without disturbing.
That's an amazing, method to try and manage your sleep, Professor Pathak. Coming towards the end of this discussion, we all always feel that, being a great brain needs to be about our ability to innovate, about our ability to compute things, the cognitive skills. And not enough attention or weightage is given to our emotional abilities, grit, determination, self-discipline, things like that. Um, any advice you would give to our viewers on any of those areas?
Uh, while intellectual abilities are important, but I have believed and I have seen firsthand that essentially your ability to deliver great things in life for yourself and for others is invariably driven by your emotional quotient rather than intellectual. In fact, I am of the opinion that we take almost all major decisions in our lives emotionally and then use our intellectual capability to sustain those decisions. I mean, take marriage, take friendship, for example. Marriage is not algorithmically decided. Typically people may hunt for brides or bridegrooms for quite some time, might apply various parameters, but you would agree that at the end, it is the gut feel within oneself which says, all right, I'll get married with. Similarly, friendships, we meet hundreds of people, but with few, we develop friendships which remain for ages. Now, that friendship just does not come out of nearness. That friendship comes out of a gut feel, or what we call a chemistry matching. And that is entirely an emotional aspect. I have a feeling that if you can learn to give more than you learn to take, then your emotional makeup can be brilliantly fused with the empathy, which can actually drive you to do much greater tasks. I am a firm believer that the emotional makeup of your mind is at least as important as the intellectual capacity of the mind.
So that is such a fantastic learning, sir. The ability to give more than you expect or what you receive. And I think it's a mantra. If all of us were able to follow, even to a small extent, the world would be a much better place, externally, and we would be more at peace within ourselves as well. On that note, I would like to thank you for being so candid in your anecdotes and in your advice, and passing on some of your words of wisdom to us. Thank you so much. And to our viewers, I would say that this is just a small attempt to decode the super brain that Professor Deepak Phatak is. Thank you.
Thank you so much.